Welcome to DC Debrief. I'm Scott Mitchell with Alex Cameron, and there he is, the pillar of our society right behind you there.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm in the Cannon Rotunda. So instead of sitting in my office today, over actually at the Capitol.
So is Cannon one of the places where you see a lot of the live shots for the networks and whatnot, Alex?
Yes, Cannon, and then there's a nearly identical rotunda over on the Senate side in the Russell Senate office building. So you have reporters in both of those locations.
Well, it's going to be, if that's the case, there's going to be a lot of media for the next couple of weeks as we start seeing this reconciliation bill start to take shape. And it appears that there's even some last minute changes that the president wants. He's gone from, I won't raise any taxes on the wealthiest Americans to, I will raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans. The state and local tax deductions are in play. You have New York Republicans, including at least Stefanik, pushing back on some of this stuff. The question is there any possible way that they can get this plane landed by Memorial Day as they promised, Alex?
Well, it really seems like a long shot at this point, but, people have counted out Mike Johnson, the speaker, before, and he's proven them wrong, so nobody's quite ready to do that. He has insisted that they are still on track, on schedule. But that deadline is a self-imposed one. They figure if they can get this package through the House by Memorial Day, get it to the Senate, then there's a chance that they can get the whole thing on the president's desk for him to sign on July 4th, which I'm sure the president would love to be able to do. But I think that, the farther we get into this, the more it looks like that's just not really realistic. This week we were expecting to see a lot of progress on these kind of components that really the big components that are still left. That is the tax policy, as you mentioned, being the biggest one. And, right now we still don't have a final agreement. We're gonna see if there's some work done over the weekend, if they can get things ironed out. But that state and local tax deduction, the cap on that is really the thing that's kind of slowing this down right now. And so, the New York Republicans, and it's not just New York, but they're California, Republicans in purple districts across the country who are saying this is really important to us because in those high state taxes like California, New York, capping the deduction that you can take on state and local taxes at $10,000, which is where it is right now, is a real problem. And I guess there was some talk of maybe boosting that to $30,000, and these members apparently were insulted by that. They want it to be much higher than that. So you'll see, the far right members are really not wanting to make these sorts of concessions because that will drive up the cost of the whole package, makes it harder for them to kind of get the savings that they want. So that's a big issue that has to be resolved. Also, the cuts to Medicaid. There's still no agreement on where that's going to happen, how that's going to happen. But the House Energy and Commerce Committee was tasked with finding $880 billion in savings over 10 years. And the assumption is that to be able to find that amount of money, you can't just come up with that amount of money in waste, fraud, and abuse in different programs. That's going to have to be real money taken out of Medicaid. And, there are several options. There are several potential ways to do that, to tweak the program where you don't actually cut benefits. But the result is in almost all of these, as the CBO informed members of Congress earlier this week, is that states would have to then step up and increase their portion, their share of the funding that goes to Medicaid, and that would likely result in states kind of pulling back, and you'd end up with millions of Americans without Medicaid, down the road. So it's very controversial. They haven't solved these issues. They're trying to mark up this bill next week, and it just seems like a long shot that they'll actually get there.
Yeah, maybe at some point in the next few weeks they'll go, we meant Labor Day. That's right, we meant Labor Day. We get them confused
Well,
sometimes.
right. No, it's interesting because I think, I would guess there are a lot of Americans who voted for Donald Trump who just assume that this is going to get done, that this agenda of his is going to get implemented, that Congress will do it. But it really takes a lot of hard work, and with the margin they have so thin, they have now. It's better than it was a month ago. They have a 3-vote margin, but it's really tough. Democrats are not going to support this at all because it contains way too many things that they object to. Republicans didn't help them when they were passing their reconciliation packages, and it's now going to turn around and whether that is going to haunt Republicans or not, we'll see. But this is not a done deal that this all gets passed. But a lot of Americans, Oklahomans, maybe assume this is going to get done, but it's going to take some hard work, and they may not end up getting everything they want.
That's for certain. I think that it's interesting. This is probably poor grammar, but the Republicans don't want to need Democrats. I mean, that's the bottom line. And so they don't have any march, so there's nobody in their caucus they can rule out. I mean, if you had a gigantic sort of majority, you could take 30 or 40 members and blow them off. You can't. I mean, you just can't. And so you have all this information that's going on. And when I wanted to yell bingo, when you started talking about the state contribution, if that goes up, these legislators in Oklahoma City who have 2 weeks now to get their budget finalized, and they're watching this every single day going, if the federal government says our contribution to Medicaid goes up 10% or 20%, then it blows holes in their budget negotiations. This is, for people watching, this is some high stakes poker, not just in DC, but in every legislature that's in session right now across America.
Yeah, it sure is. And I know that everybody is working hard. There are a lot of people who are willing to compromise, but there are some people sort of on the fringes who don't want to make those concessions. The members of the House Freedom Caucus, Oklahoma Congressman Josh Burkeen, one of them, sent a letter to Speaker Johnson this week, just kind of reiterating that they expect what's in the House budget resolution, all the cuts that they called for in there, will be adhered to the letter. If that's where you're coming from, if you're not willing to budge at all, now when push comes to shove, will they? Probably some of them, but maybe not all of them. So, it is a kind of a high stakes poker game.
Yeah, and some of these groups like the Committee for a Fair and Responsible Budget that we've had on hot seat a couple of times, I mean, they're on the sidelines screaming, going, no, this is going to add to the deficit and to the debt. So anyway, it is high stakes poker. All right, so there's another poker game being played I wanted to ask you about, and that is the president announced a trade deal with the UK. Now, he's been under intense pressure ever since the tariffs were announced, and then much of it brought back to try to show some progress to the American public on, we did these tariffs, we'll get better deals. He's got to have some better deals. This is the first one that was announced. Can you help us understand generally what's in it and what's next for it? Because it's not a done deal, right?
No, it's not a done deal. I mean, there is still probably months of work to get it all finalized. But I think the president wanted to show that they are making some progress. That has really been a process that's been shrouded in mystery because they're not giving out much details in the way of who they're having talks with. We do know that Treasury Secretary Bessent is in Switzerland this weekend to have talks with China, but otherwise it's really not been a very open book in terms of who is being negotiated, who's negotiating right now. So I think the president wanted to show that they did do something. Of course, they've been working on a bilateral trade deal with Great Britain since Brexit, so it's been many years. So as I said in my story last week, this is probably one of the easier deals to get done, and it's still not done. Now, it does have some potential wins. They say $5 billion in new earnings for American exporters, and that would include people who are involved in the beef industry. So Oklahoma cattle ranchers could certainly benefit if they get more access to British markets through this bill. So that's one of the big things in this. It also does decrease some of the pain that President Trump put on Great Britain in terms of tariffs, reducing the 25% tariff on imported autos down to 10% for the first 100,000 British-made vehicles that come into the country. Also reduces the aluminum, as they say in Great Britain, aluminium tariff on steel and aluminum from 25% to 10%. So there's some things in there. There's some wins, but again, it's not finalized, and it will likely take weeks, if not several more months, before there's actually signed documents there.
There are millions of people that want to buy Range Rovers and Jaguars who are just standing by waiting to see how this works.
Yeah. Right. You're right.
And when you see the Prime Minister talking, here's a hint for our viewers. Like, always put captions on when the PM is talking and you're watching British politicians, because I'm reminded we're the same sort of people separated by a common language. And our English is so much different than the King's English that they speak.
Yes.
All right. Well, this is going to be one of those weekends you need to get a lot of rest and stay hydrated, Alex, because the next week or two is going to be a doozy.
I plan to be ready for next week.
All right. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Thanks, Scott.
And thanks for watching DC Debrief. See this again, the full interview, at news9.com and news6.com, and follow me at Mitchell Talks.